I just met you guys, ENRIQUE SERNA. I became a member of the bar here in Idaho last November. Victoria, my wife in the back, and I, empty nesters, 5 kids, moved to Idaho, and our origins bring us here with the start of Tamarack Resort way back then. I used to represent Mr. Miguel when he was first started to buy a lot of the ranches and what became Tamarack Resort. So we became familiar with the state of Idaho. I practice primarily nationwide, even though our office is in Texas, and now we have an office here in Idaho. And my background is, I'm 54, I've been an attorney for 30 years approximately, next May, and I've tried a hell of a lot of cases all over the United States. Intriguing to me is the topic of mass torts. And aside from my personal story and wanting to be a trial lawyer, came from a radio background from the family, and eventually when we sold some of the radio stations that we had to interact with a bunch of attorneys so that we can actually get our business done right and we can make the money that we did way back then. That got me into law school. And immediately as I got into law school, I love torts, love contracts, love discussions, love arguments, love litigation. And I joined moot court right off the bat. And ever since then, I think the last case I tried was way back then, because when they get to pull your record and you have a bunch of verdicts, you get to settle a lot of cases. So I concentrate a lot in product liability through my life. And I started way back then with Ford versus Firestone cases. You all remember all those dangerous combinations when product liability was kind of like at its very early inception. Really? You're deceiving us, you're not telling us the truth, you're not disclosing, you're doing all these matters. That's one. Then it became very popular to be in product liability, and we started to prosecute cases against automakers for defective seat belts and defective pillars in the roof, defective glazing, etc. And as a result of it, I got a Mitsubishi case in 2002, filed a case against Mitsubishi. The Japanese were fighting me very hard to even do simple discovery, and eventually I started to get discovery warranted and realized that they were just covering a lot, lying a lot, hiding a lot, deceiving the consumer a lot, and just so totally not caring about it. So I started to advertise for Mitsubishi cases through my colleagues, and because it's such a small automaker, nobody wanted to take those cases. So eventually they started to refer them all to me. Oh, there's a guy in Texas that's doing Mitsubishi cases. Go to him, go to him, go to him. Suddenly I had like 30 cases. Death cases, severed bodies, horrible rollovers, paralyzed people, horrible circumstances. So eventually, all from 2000 to about 2010, I was the guy to go to in the United States for Mitsubishi. In 2018, we were successful enough to kick Mitsubishi out of California, and they had to go find refuge in Tennessee because Mitsubishi had no statute of repose in California, and I actually tried 37 cases and got 37 verdicts against Mitsubishi all over state courts in the United States on product liability. So it's about 2010, and I'm listening of opportunities, and I hear lawyers talking about all these product cases, like tractors gone wrong, and air conditioning units blowing up, and roofs leaking and not being correct when they're mass produced, Chinese drywall that was infected. And so I started to say, oh my God, there are so many products out there that we just don't realize are so darn dangerous and can affect a multitude of people. So I continued on the product liability story, and eventually it transcended that from about 2012 to about 2018, this concept of mass torts as we know it started to kind of be famous. All these MDL started to form, all these different numerosity claims and commonality claims all encapsulated into one court, and how are we going to administer and deal with it? And when you're a small practitioner, that can certainly become overwhelming. So all that became a fame, and so we said, oh gee, if there's an automotive recall, Kia, Chevy, Ford, I'm on it. You mean to tell me that if I can find 20 or 30 or 40 people with similar problems, I can bring it before a federal panel that can then incorporate and land the litigation in a single court that you can administer, that then you can apply to be in the plaintiff steering committee, and you can draw income and fees out of that as you're prosecuting the case, and then you can add great amount of dollars for your clients and your practice as a result of starting to move cases with cooperating with other lawyers that are working for the same interest. And our practice then developed to be one where we like to talk to a lot of people about mass torts, because from Idaho, that I've never tried a case in this state, but from Washington, Oregon to Delaware to Maine to Texas to Florida to California to Illinois, where I've tried cases, the same commonality exists in a lot of the products that can be going wrong, and they can be sitting right there in our fingertips, right in front of us, and all we got to do is explore our client base, our colleagues, our friends, others with similar interests. So Victoria and I are sitting in our condo in Miami about 2018, and I get a call from one of my very good friends who has a very nice yacht, and he tells me, bro, you're not gonna believe what just happened to me. I lost both engines coming from the Bahamas on the way to Miami. We had an engine fire compartment. We had to get all the 22 people, all kids and stuff, in rafts. And it was so darn scary. We had to call the Coast Guard. We all evacuated. We're in rafts in front of the ocean, in the ocean. And it was scary as hell. And I don't know what to do about it. He's another trial lawyer, except he does a lot more corporate work. I said, well, push it into, I'm glad you're safe. Get it into the dock. What do you want me to do about it? He goes, well, you're a products guy, and something went really bad in the engine room. Something was not right, and my engine is totally up to date. The filtration is up to date. The maintenance up to date. We've done everything we can for this engine to keep it running right. At the same time, my firm has a case of two boys that died inside of a tank. They were cleaning tanks and they got asphyxiated, and I'm co-counsel with a gentleman called John Powell out of Texas. So I'm with John after a deposition in an unrelated case. And I said, shit, John, I got this case, man, out of Miami, and I have this Caterpillar engine just crapping out. And this engine is about $450,000 engine that goes in this vessel. And he goes, well, what'd you say? Yeah, it's a Caterpillar case. He goes, wait a second, Enrique, I have a guy that chops wood, and he has those large industrial choppers powered by a Caterpillar C18, and its biggest one by a C32, and his stuff is crapping out too. And I'm like, oh geez, this is interesting. Certainly. So I take, John, what are you going to do with the case? Well, I don't know what to do with it, but I'm asking you. You like all these engines and products and all these other things. So eventually, John refers me his case. I send a group of experts to look at that wood chipper engine. Then I had already sent an expert to look at the Caterpillar engine in that vessel. And we come up with the same conclusion. They were properly maintained, they were properly serviced, they were still in warranty, and we don't know what happened. So now we have two unrelated incidents in two parts of the country going, Jesus, all you needed to do in commonality was have the engine on, and all you needed to do is have the engine in maintenance, properly serviced, running and operating, idle to back, reverse, whatever the speeds were allowed. So we put two and two together, and eventually I say, you know what? I don't know that Caterpillar will cooperate with me if I send a demand letter. But I need to get to the bottom line. So I started to dig all the minutes of Caterpillar. And I had realized, because they're a public company, that in their disclosures, they had shifted a lot of their manufacturing of those engine components to China. And then I'm like, all right. Now I'm smelling something here. Now I get it. Americans make a little bit of mistakes, but we find out that a lot of these imported parts from a lot of the other countries, they really don't have our standards, because we sue them and hit them all the time. And yep, they're bad, and yep, they're terrible, but they're not as terrible as other countries that don't give a shit as to what type of stuff we put in our products. So when I say that, I say, you know what, it smells like it. So I immediately went to Google and said, you know what, why not? Let me grab $2,500, let me do some sponsored ads, and let me just throw the message out there in the places where these wood chipping engines can be, or these maritime engines can be. And voila, I got 3-4 leads. Oh, I'm a captain in a vessel, and we were fishing, and I lost the starboard, and it's a Caterpillar C18. Okay. Oh boy, I got another one. So I'm like, Jesus, another wood chipper guy came through, another boat came through, I'm filing suit. I don't care. Well, there's 4 cases from 2 states. Well, why not? Let me file it in Texas. Why not? Let me see what happens to it. Immediately I file it in Texas, immediately they remove it to federal court, and immediately I say, Texas might not be my best friend when it comes to Rule 23. Let me dismiss, and I went straight to Illinois to file the case right there in Peoria where Caterpillar is. Immediately, John calls me and says, you're never gonna believe what just happened. You remember that little state case that I referred you to that then we dismissed? Caterpillar just emailed me a bunch of discovery, not knowing that this thing was off. And Enrique, you should see it. I need for you to come to my office. It's too large to email. Make arrangements, go to John's office, start sitting down. Caterpillar knew that the Chinese manufacturers, they chose to manufacture a liner where the cylinder lies, were not following tolerances, and the metal was way too thin. So, in combustion, as the engine goes, metal gets really hot, and over time gets really thin. And on or about 800 hours, when the machine should last 8,000, there is a small leak because the metal gets so thin that antifreeze seeps into the liner and the engine blows, potentially causing a fire. I'm like, John, I can't believe you have these documents. So I have 4 clients across the US, 2 referrals from lawyers that I told them, hey, this is the way I practice.